The fastest way to misunderstand a person is to decide who they are before they speak. The conference room on the 32nd floor overlooked most of downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline while executives moved through conversations about acquisitions, partnerships, and quarterly projections. Everything about the room reflected success. Expensive furniture. Tailored suits. Perfectly rehearsed confidence. Ethan Walker stood near the back holding a simple folder beneath one arm. At 44 years old, he looked more like a contractor than someone attending a corporate networking event. His jacket showed signs of use. His shoes were clean but ordinary. Most people glanced past him without a second thought. Ethan seemed perfectly comfortable with that. Across the room, Olivia Hart finished speaking with a group of investors. As Chief Executive Officer of Hart Global Ventures, she had built a reputation for making decisions quickly. Some called it efficiency. Others called it impatience. Either way, few people questioned her judgment. One of the event organizers approached her and quietly pointed toward Ethan. "There is someone who wanted a few minutes of your time." Olivia barely looked in his direction. "Who is he?" "Ethan Walker." She waited. "And?" The organizer hesitated. "He has an idea regarding the community development project." Olivia checked her watch. Her schedule was already packed. Investors. Board members. Reporters. People she considered priorities. She finally walked toward Ethan. Several nearby guests noticed and paused their conversations. Ethan greeted her with a polite nod. "Ms. Hart." Olivia offered a professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Mr. Walker." Ethan opened the folder. "I know your company is reviewing proposals for the West Side redevelopment project. I spent some time studying the area and thought there might be a better approach." Olivia glanced at the folder but made no effort to take it. "Do you work in urban development?" "No." "Finance?" "No." "Commercial real estate?" Ethan shook his head. "I run a small maintenance company." A few people standing nearby exchanged amused looks. Olivia exhaled softly. Not rudely. Simply dismissively. The kind of reaction successful people often develop when they believe a conversation is already over. "Mr. Walker," she said, looking briefly toward the investors waiting across the room, "you are probably a good man, but I have very little time today." Ethan nodded. "I understand." Olivia started to leave, then stopped. "Actually, let me save both of us some time." The room grew slightly quieter. "You are not worth my time." No anger accompanied the words. No raised voice. Somehow that made them feel heavier. Several people looked away. Others pretended not to hear. Ethan remained completely still. His expression never changed. He simply closed the folder. Olivia expected disappointment. Maybe embarrassment. Instead, he nodded once. "Thank you for being honest." The answer caught her off guard. Before she could respond, Ethan turned and walked toward the exit. No argument. No attempt to defend himself. No effort to change her mind. Just quiet acceptance. Olivia watched him leave for a moment before returning to her waiting investors. Within minutes the encounter disappeared from her thoughts. For Ethan Walker, however, the day was far from over. Because while an entire room had just decided he was unimportant, someone else was already waiting for him at home. And unlike everyone inside that tower, she believed there was nothing her father could not do. The drive home took nearly 40 minutes. Chicago traffic moved slowly beneath a gray evening sky while Ethan Walker kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near the folder he had never opened during the meeting. Most people would have replayed the conversation over and over. Most people would have thought about the embarrassment. Ethan thought about dinner. Lily hated it when he worked late. That concern occupied far more space in his mind than anything that happened inside a corporate conference room. By the time he pulled into the driveway, the porch light was already on. Before he could even reach the front door, it opened. Lily Walker appeared with the energy only 11-year-old girls seemed capable of maintaining. "You are late." Ethan smiled. "I know. You said 6 o'clock. And what time is it?" Lily looked at the clock behind her. 6:23. Ethan nodded. "Then your math is correct." She crossed her arms dramatically. "I inherited that from you." Ethan laughed and followed her inside. The house was small. Nothing about it would impress investors or executives. The furniture had been chosen for comfort rather than appearance. Family photographs covered the walls. School projects occupied half the kitchen table. The place felt lived in. Warm. Real. While Ethan prepared dinner, Lily worked on a science presentation involving renewable energy. Every few minutes she interrupted herself to ask a question. Ethan answered each one patiently. To him, no conversation in a skyscraper had ever been more important than this one. During dinner, Lily finally noticed the folder sitting beside the kitchen counter. "Did your meeting go well?" Ethan took a sip of water before answering. "Depends how you define well." Lily narrowed her eyes. "That usually means something happened." Ethan smiled slightly. "You pay too much attention. I learned from the best." He shook his head. Some days it felt impossible to hide anything from her. Lily set down her fork. "Did someone say something rude?" The question surprised him. "Why would you ask that?" "Because when people are rude, you get quiet." Ethan considered that for a moment. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. "Someone said I was wasting their time." Lily frowned immediately. "That is not true." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. "I know." The certainty in her voice made him smile. Lily did not see him as a maintenance company owner. She did not care about titles or social status. To her, he was simply Dad. The person who fixed broken bicycles, helped with homework, and always remembered to attend school events. Later that evening, after dinner dishes were washed and homework was finished, Ethan sat alone on the back porch. The neighborhood had grown quiet. Porch lights glowed softly across the street. Crickets filled the evening air. He finally opened the folder. Inside were detailed plans for the West Side redevelopment project. He studied the pages carefully. Several mistakes immediately stood out. Not technical mistakes. Human ones. The proposal looked impressive on paper, but it ignored the people who actually lived there. Ethan made a few notes in the margins. Then a few more. Within 30 minutes, entire sections had been rewritten. Behind him, the screen door opened. Lily stepped outside holding a blanket around her shoulders. "You are working again." Ethan looked up. "Just thinking." She sat beside him. "About the project?" He nodded. Lily studied the papers for a moment. "Are you still going to send them your ideas?" Ethan looked toward the dark horizon. Then back at the proposal. His answer came without hesitation. "Of course." Lily seemed confused. "Even after what happened?" Ethan smiled. "The project is not about me." The simple answer lingered between them. And somewhere across the city, Olivia Hart had no idea that the man she dismissed that afternoon was still trying to help solve a problem she had not even realized existed. The following week, life continued exactly as Ethan Walker expected it would. The maintenance company opened at 7 every morning. Service trucks came and went throughout the day. Customers called with problems that needed solving. Most of them never cared who owned the company. They only cared whether Ethan could help. And he usually could. By Wednesday afternoon, the meeting in the skyscraper had become little more than a memory. At least for him. Across the city, however, something unusual had started happening. Olivia Hart was reviewing updates related to the West Side redevelopment project when her assistant placed a new folder on the desk. Another community recommendation, the assistant said. Olivia barely looked up. Put it with the others. You may want to read this one. Olivia sighed and opened the folder. The first page immediately caught her attention. Someone had identified several logistical problems the planning team had missed. Parking access. Public transportation routes. Small business displacement. Community service gaps. The observations were precise. Practical. Difficult to argue with. Olivia continued reading. By the third page, her expression had changed. Whoever wrote the report understood the neighborhood far better than the consultants her company had hired. Who submitted this? She asked. The assistant checked a note attached to the file. Ethan Walker. Olivia looked up. For a moment she said nothing. Then she closed the folder. Interesting. It was the first time she had used that word in connection with his name. Later that afternoon, nearly 15 miles away, Ethan parked his service truck outside a small elementary school. Parents waited near the entrance while children poured onto the sidewalks. The moment Lily spotted him, she smiled. You remembered. Ethan pretended to look surprised. Was there a chance I would forget? Last year you almost did. I was 7 minutes late. That still counts. Ethan laughed and took her backpack. As they walked toward the truck, a voice called from behind them. Mr. Walker. Ethan turned. A woman in her 50s approached from the school entrance. Lily immediately smiled. Hi, Mrs. Carter. The teacher returned the smile before looking at Ethan. I wanted to thank you again. Ethan looked mildly uncomfortable. That was not necessary. Mrs. Carter shook her head. Actually, it was. Lily watched the exchange with curiosity. The teacher continued. The new reading center would not exist without your help. Ethan immediately changed the subject. How did the book drive turn out? Mrs. Carter smiled knowingly. Exactly the way you hoped it would. After she walked away, Lily climbed into the truck. You never told me about that. Ethan started the engine. There is not much to tell. Mrs. Carter looked pretty grateful. Ethan focused on the road ahead. A lot of people helped. Lily narrowed her eyes. Dad. Ethan smiled. What? You always do that. Do what? Someone thanks you and you act like you had nothing to do with it. Ethan did not answer right away. Eventually he said, most good things happen because groups of people work together. Lily looked unconvinced. Later that evening, Olivia attended a charity board meeting. During a discussion about community partnerships, one of the board members mentioned a recent literacy initiative. We were lucky Ethan Walker stepped in when funding disappeared. Olivia looked up immediately. Ethan Walker? The board member nodded. You know him? Olivia hesitated. Not really. You should. The response came casually. Almost absent-mindedly. Yet something about it lingered. It was the second time in less than 2 days that his name had surfaced unexpectedly. Olivia found herself thinking about the maintenance company owner she had dismissed without a second thought. And for the first time, she began to wonder how many stories existed behind the people she usually overlooked. 2 weeks later, the West Side redevelopment project faced its first serious problem. What had been presented as a straightforward revitalization effort suddenly encountered growing resistance from local business owners and community organizations. Meetings became tense. Public support began slipping away. Several advisors assured Olivia Hart the concerns were temporary. Olivia was not convinced. She had spent years building companies. She understood that when enough people complained about the same issue, the issue was usually real. Late one evening she sat alone in a conference room reviewing reports. Charts covered the screen at the far end of the table. Community feedback summaries filled several binders. Yet none of the proposed solutions felt complete. They addressed symptoms rather than causes. Frustrated, Olivia pushed one of the reports aside. Something about the entire situation reminded her of the folder Ethan Walker had submitted. Against her better judgment, she opened the document again. This time she read every page carefully. The deeper she went, the more uncomfortable she became. Ethan had predicted nearly every major concern now appearing in public meetings. Traffic flow problems. Access issues for local businesses. Community trust concerns. Even specific logistical challenges. The document read less like a suggestion and more like a roadmap. Olivia leaned back slowly. For the first time, she wondered how a maintenance company owner had understood the situation better than several consulting firms. The next morning, while executives gathered to discuss damage control, Olivia asked a simple question. Has anyone spoken with the business owners directly? Silence answered her. Eventually one consultant cleared his throat. We reviewed survey data. Olivia frowned. That is not what I asked. The room grew quiet. Nearly everyone had analyzed spreadsheets. Very few had actually visited the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Ethan spent the morning repairing a heating system at a small community center. The building served dozens of local families. Budget limitations meant repairs were often delayed. Ethan had been helping them for years. As he packed his tools, the director approached him. I still do not know how to thank you. Ethan smiled. The heater works. That is enough. The director laughed. You always say that. Ethan shrugged. Because it is usually true. Before leaving, he noticed several volunteers preparing supplies for an upcoming food drive. Without being asked, he spent another hour helping move equipment and organize storage areas. Nobody treated the gesture as unusual. They had seen it before. To Ethan, helping was not an event. It was simply part of the day. Across town, Olivia's schedule brought her unexpectedly into the very neighborhood her company planned to redevelop. For the first time, she walked the streets herself. She entered local shops. Spoke with business owners. Listened instead of presenting. What she heard sounded remarkably familiar. Almost every concern matched observations Ethan had outlined weeks earlier. By late afternoon, Olivia entered a small family-owned hardware store. The owner greeted her politely. During their conversation, Ethan's name surfaced again. If you want to understand this neighborhood, the owner said, talk to Ethan Walker. Olivia stared at him. You know him too? The owner laughed. Around here, everybody knows Ethan. Olivia looked out the front window toward the street. It was becoming impossible to ignore. Everywhere she went, people spoke about the same man with the same respect. Not admiration for money. Not admiration for power. Something else. Something rarer. And for the first time, Olivia found herself asking a question she never expected to ask. What if the person she dismissed had understood everything from the beginning? The question stayed with Olivia Hart long after she left the hardware store. During the following days, she heard Ethan Walker's name again and again. A school administrator mentioned him during a fundraising discussion. A restaurant owner thanked him for helping after a plumbing emergency. A non-profit director described him as one of the most dependable people she had ever met. None of these conversations were connected. None of the people knew each other. Yet every story carried the same theme. Ethan showed up when help was needed and disappeared before anyone could make a big deal about it. Olivia found the pattern difficult to ignore. One afternoon she sat across from Marcus Reynolds, a retired business executive she respected more than almost anyone. Marcus had spent 40 years building successful companies without ever losing the respect of his employees. Olivia trusted his judgment. During a discussion about leadership, Ethan's name surfaced once again. "You know him?" Olivia asked. Marcus smiled. "Of course." The answer came so quickly that it surprised her. "How?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "About 6 years ago, I was advising a manufacturing company outside the city. We had a major operations problem. Everyone was focused on financial solutions. Ethan walked through the facility once and identified the real issue in less than an hour." Olivia frowned. "He works in maintenance." Marcus laughed softly. "That is what everyone said." The response irritated her more than she expected. Not because Marcus was wrong. Because she had said the exact same thing. "Why did nobody hire him?" she asked. Marcus became quiet for a moment. "They tried." Olivia looked up. "What happened?" "He turned them down." That answer was not what she expected. Marcus continued. "Several times." Olivia stared at him. Most people spent their careers chasing larger opportunities. Higher salaries. Bigger titles. Better offices. Ethan appeared to have walked away from them. "Why?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "You should ask him." Later that evening, Olivia could not stop thinking about the conversation. After returning home, she opened her laptop and began researching Ethan Walker. The results were surprisingly limited. No major interviews. No public achievements. No self-promotion. The lack of information itself seemed unusual. Then she found an article from several years earlier. The story focused on a regional business award. Ethan's name appeared among the finalists. According to the article, he withdrew before the final selection process. Olivia opened another article. Similar result. Community recognition. Declined. Leadership award. Declined. Public recognition event. Declined. The pattern repeated itself over and over. She leaned back slowly. People spent enormous amounts of energy trying to be noticed. Ethan appeared to spend equal energy avoiding it. Across town, Ethan sat in the front row of a middle school auditorium while Lily participated in a student presentation night. Parents filled the seats. Cameras flashed. Children nervously presented projects they had spent weeks preparing. When Lily finished speaking, she immediately looked toward her father. Ethan stood and applauded with everyone else. Her smile could have illuminated the entire room. To him, nothing else mattered. After the event ended, Lily joined him near the exit. "How did I do?" Ethan pretended to think carefully. "I would say excellent." "Only excellent?" she asked dramatically. Ethan laughed. "Very excellent." As they walked toward the parking lot, neither of them noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Olivia sat behind the wheel watching the father and daughter disappear into the evening. For the first time, she was no longer curious about what Ethan had accomplished. She was becoming curious about why he had chosen the life he was living. The more Olivia Hart learned about Ethan Walker, the less her original judgment made sense. Every conversation seemed to reveal another piece of a picture she had completely missed. Yet no matter how many stories she heard, one question remained unanswered. Why had he repeatedly walked away from opportunities most people would spend a lifetime pursuing? The answer arrived unexpectedly on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Olivia was reviewing redevelopment proposals when her assistant entered carrying a small folder. "I thought you might want to see this." Olivia accepted it without much interest. Then she noticed the name attached to the documents. Ethan Walker. She opened the file immediately. The contents came from an old regional business journal. Several years earlier, Ethan had been offered a senior operational role with a national facilities management company. The position would have tripled his income. Another document showed a consulting contract proposal from a major firm. There was also a leadership position with a rapidly growing corporation. Every offer ended the same way. Declined. Olivia stared at the pages. Most people spent decades hoping for opportunities like these. Ethan appeared to reject them as casually as someone turning down a second cup of coffee. Did he ever explain why? She asked. Her assistant shook her head. Not that I could find. That evening, Olivia attended a community planning session related to the redevelopment project. She expected another long discussion about budgets and infrastructure. Instead, she found herself listening to local residents tell stories. One woman described how Ethan had helped organize repairs after a severe winter storm damaged several homes. A small business owner explained how Ethan quietly connected struggling entrepreneurs with resources when they were close to shutting down. An elderly man spoke about Ethan visiting a veteran center every month to help with maintenance projects. None of the stories sounded dramatic. That was what made them powerful. Ethan never appeared to be trying to impress anyone. He simply noticed problems and helped solve them. After the meeting ended, Olivia remained behind speaking with a volunteer coordinator named Karen Mitchell. Eventually the conversation turned toward Ethan once again. Karen smiled knowingly. You are trying to figure him out. Olivia laughed softly. Is it that obvious? A little. Karen folded several papers before continuing. Most people ask the wrong question. Olivia looked curious. What is the wrong question? They ask why Ethan turned down opportunities. Karen paused. The better question is what he chose instead. The answer lingered in Olivia's mind during the drive home. What he chose instead. The following evening provided part of that answer. Ethan sat in the front row of a school auditorium once again. This time Lily was receiving recognition for academic achievement. Parents filled the room. Cameras flashed. Proud families applauded as students crossed the stage. When Lily's name was called, Ethan stood immediately. The smile on his face contained more pride than any award ceremony Olivia had ever attended. Later, after the event ended, father and daughter stopped at a small diner for dessert. Through the front window, they laughed about something only the two of them understood. No executives. No investors. No titles. Just a father and his daughter sharing a simple moment together. Across the street, Olivia sat in her parked car watching from a distance. For the first time, she was beginning to understand. Ethan had not walked away from success. He had simply defined it differently from everyone else. The following Monday morning, Olivia Hart made a decision that would have seemed impossible a month earlier. She canceled 2 meetings, postponed a strategy review, and drove across the city without notifying anyone from her executive team. By 10 o'clock she was standing outside Walker Maintenance Services. The building was simple and practical. Service trucks occupied several parking spaces. Employees moved in and out carrying equipment and supplies. Nothing about the place looked extraordinary. Yet Olivia had learned enough to stop trusting appearances. Through an open garage door, she spotted Ethan speaking with one of his technicians. He listened carefully, asked a few questions, and then pointed toward a repair schedule posted on the wall. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. The technician walked away smiling. Ethan noticed Olivia only after turning around. For a brief moment surprise crossed his face. Then it disappeared. Ms. Hart. Olivia suddenly felt less comfortable than she expected. Mr. Walker. Ethan waited patiently. The same way he seemed to wait for everything. "Do you have a few minutes?" she asked. A small smile appeared. "Apparently I do." The answer landed harder than she intended. Ethan was not mocking her. That somehow made it worse. He simply remembered exactly what she had said during their first meeting. A few minutes later they sat at a small table in the break room. No floor-to-ceiling windows. No executive assistants. No conference screens. Just coffee and silence. Olivia finally spoke. "I owe you an apology." Ethan looked genuinely puzzled. "For what?" She stared at him. "You know for what." He considered the question for a moment before shrugging lightly. "That was weeks ago." Olivia shook her head. "That does not make it acceptable." Ethan wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "People make judgments. It happens." The calmness in his voice frustrated her. Not because he was wrong. Because he seemed completely uninterested in defending himself. "Why did you never say anything?" she asked. "About what?" "Everything." Olivia gestured vaguely. "The projects. The organizations. The opportunities you turned down. Any of it." Ethan smiled slightly. "Nobody asked." The answer left her speechless. Most people spent enormous effort trying to advertise their accomplishments. Ethan appeared to spend equal effort ignoring them. Before Olivia could respond, the break room door opened. Lily Walker stepped inside carrying a school backpack. "Dad, I forgot my..." She stopped when she saw Olivia. Ethan stood immediately. "You remember Ms. Hart?" Lily nodded politely. Olivia smiled. "Hello, Lily." Within seconds the atmosphere changed. Ethan's attention shifted entirely toward his daughter. Not dramatically. Naturally. As if nothing else in the room mattered more. Lily retrieved a notebook from a nearby shelf. "I have a science test today." Ethan smiled. "You will do great. What if I forget something? Then you will remember it 5 seconds later." Lily laughed. The exchange lasted less than a minute. Yet Olivia found herself watching it closely. She finally understood what every conversation had been trying to tell her. The answer was never hidden inside Ethan's achievements. It was visible in moments like this. When Lily left, the room became quiet again. Olivia looked at Ethan differently now. Not as a maintenance company owner. Not as a missed business opportunity. But as a man who had deliberately built his life around something he considered more important than status. And for the first time, she wondered whether success might mean something entirely different from what she had spent years pursuing. The conversation in the break room should have ended there. An apology had been offered. Understanding had begun to replace assumptions. Yet Olivia Hart found herself returning several days later. This time there was no business reason. No redevelopment report. No community meeting. She simply wanted answers. Ethan Walker was loading equipment into a service truck when she arrived. The afternoon sun reflected off nearby windows while employees moved through their routines. Ethan noticed her and smiled politely. "Back already?" Olivia laughed softly. "I am starting to think that surprises you." "A little." He closed the truck door and gestured toward a nearby bench. A few minutes later they sat outside watching traffic move through the street. For the first time since meeting him, Olivia felt no pressure to maintain the image people expected from her. No boardroom confidence. No executive performance. Just honesty. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Ethan nodded. "Why did you stay?" He looked confused. "Stay where?" "Here." Olivia motioned toward the neighborhood. "This company. This life. All of it." Ethan thought for a moment. That is a bigger question than it sounds. I know. He watched a passing truck before speaking. After my wife passed away, Lily was 7 years old. Olivia remained silent. She had never heard him mention it before. Ethan continued calmly. For a while I accepted every opportunity that came along. More hours. More travel. More projects. He smiled faintly. I convinced myself I was doing it for her. The smile disappeared. One night I got home after she had already fallen asleep. Again. I walked into her room and found a school assignment on her desk. Olivia listened carefully. What was it? A paper about her hero. Ethan looked toward the street. She wrote about me. The words hung quietly between them. What did she say? Olivia asked. Ethan laughed softly. She said her hero fixed things. A long pause followed. Then she wrote that her hero was never home. Olivia lowered her eyes. Something about the simplicity of the story made it more powerful. Ethan continued. That was the moment I realized I was succeeding at the wrong thing. The answer settled over them both. No dramatic revelation. No extraordinary sacrifice. Just a father making a choice. Olivia thought about her own life. The endless meetings. The flights. The presentations. The goals that always seemed to move further away the closer she came to reaching them. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Ethan shook his head immediately. Not once. The certainty in his voice carried no hesitation. None at all. A few minutes later, Lily arrived carrying a backpack and a stack of school papers. She immediately joined the conversation without the slightest concern about titles or social status. Within moments she was telling a story about a science project that had gone completely wrong. Ethan listened as though it were the most important briefing in the world. Olivia found herself smiling. The interaction explained more than any biography ever could. Eventually Lily looked at Olivia. My dad says you are helping fix the neighborhood project. Olivia nodded. I am trying. Lily smiled. Then you should probably listen to him. Ethan laughed. Lily. What? She asked innocently. Olivia laughed too. Yet beneath the humor was an uncomfortable truth. She should have listened. From the beginning. And as the afternoon sunlight stretched across the parking lot, Olivia realized something else. The person she once dismissed was quietly teaching her a lesson about success that no executive mentor had ever managed to explain. 3 months later, the West Side redevelopment project officially launched. This time the plan looked very different from the original proposal. Small businesses remained protected. Community resources were expanded. Local leaders participated in decision-making. Public support had returned. Reporters described it as one of the most successful collaborative projects the city had seen in years. During the opening ceremony, executives, investors, city officials, and community representatives gathered beneath a large outdoor pavilion. Olivia Hart stood near the stage reviewing final remarks while cameras and journalists filled the surrounding area. The event represented a major professional success. Yet her thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. Eventually she spotted Ethan Walker standing near the back of the crowd beside Lily. He looked exactly the same as the day she first met him. No expensive suit. No attempt to attract attention. Just a father standing beside his daughter. When the ceremony began, several speakers discussed economic growth, community partnerships, and long-term opportunities. Then Olivia stepped to the podium. The audience grew quiet. She spoke briefly about the project itself before pausing. There is someone here today who deserves recognition. Ethan immediately looked uncomfortable. Lily smiled because she already knew what was coming. Olivia continued. Months ago, I ignored advice that would have saved everyone a great deal of time. A few executives exchanged surprised looks. Public admissions were not common in her world. I made the mistake of judging a person before understanding who he was. The crowd listened carefully. Olivia looked directly toward Ethan. Fortunately, he was more interested in helping people than proving me wrong. Silence settled over the audience. It was the kind of silence that appears when people recognize honesty. Olivia stepped away from the podium and approached him. Hundreds of people watched. Ethan looked as though he wished the ground would open beneath him. Olivia smiled. Would you join me for a moment? Ethan sighed softly. Lily nudged him forward. The audience laughed. A few moments later they stood together on the stage. Olivia looked at him. There is something I have wanted to ask you since the day we met. Ethan nodded. All right. She took a slow breath. Why did you never try to prove me wrong? The crowd became completely silent. Reporters lowered their cameras. Even the city noise seemed distant. Ethan thought about the question for several seconds. Then he smiled. It was the same calm smile he carried through every challenge, every misunderstanding, and every success. When he finally spoke, his voice remained steady and quiet. I was too busy proving myself right. The words were simple. No speech. No dramatic performance. Just the truth. Yet the impact moved through the crowd immediately. Olivia lowered her eyes for a moment. Not because she felt embarrassed. Because she finally understood. Ethan had never measured his worth by someone else's opinion. Not hers. Not anyone's. He had built his life around what mattered most and remained faithful to it. That was why nothing she said had the power to diminish him. The audience applauded. Ethan accepted it politely, then stepped down from the stage before anyone could stop him. Moments later he was back beside Lily. As the crowd dispersed, she looked up at him with a smile. That was a pretty good answer. Ethan laughed softly. I suppose it was. Together they walked toward the parking lot while conversations continued behind them. Olivia watched them leave and realized something she would never forget. Success was not always found in the tallest buildings, the largest companies, or the most impressive titles. Sometimes it looked like a father heading home with his daughter, completely at peace with the life he had chosen.